Hello and welcome to Module 2 of Azure CSP SMB Sales Fundamentals. Um, Today we'll be covering some topics around Azure and Microsoft CSP. Basically going through a list of differences between the CSP Enterprise Agreement pay-as-you-go. We will look at the different tools you can use to price up solutions on Azure. Then we'll look at tools you can use or services you can deploy after you've deployed the solution. Lastly, we will look into the different sales programs available to CSP partners just to assist you in your endeavors. Cloud Solution Provider, or CSP. Now, there are different ways to transact with Microsoft Cloud. The enterprise agreements are agreements between the customer and Microsoft, usually encompasses other Microsoft products as well. This is an annual commitment that a customer needs to commit to Microsoft and they consume in a form of a credit. The pay-as-you-go plans are basically customer signs up to Azure with a credit card and they start paying from there on. For CSP, the partner resells the Microsoft licenses and subscriptions to the other customers. A direct CSP partner buys and sells directly with Microsoft. An indirect CSP reseller buys and sells through a CSP provider like exeed. There are other types of Azure subscriptions, other ways you can get Azure subscriptions, like through the Open program and Azure sponsorship for the likes of not-for-profit organizations. We won't really cover them today since the focus is around CSP. So why do we choose CSP? The CSP program allows partners to bundle managed services to their offerings, just like you would with other services as a managed service provider that you currently are doing. This gives you the opportunity to provide the best service you can by adding value to the services already offered by Microsoft. The CSP partner or reseller owns the relationship with the customers and is the support to the customer. This means that any support required from Microsoft needs to go through the CSP partner, or well, initially the CSP reseller, but the CSP reseller then escalates to the CSP provider. If you're a CSP direct, you handle the entire relationship between Microsoft and the customer there. With CSP, services are charged on consumption, so you don't do a prepay credit. You don't prepay credit and then consume it after, unlike the EA and the open plans. Basically, you sign an agreement with the provider, uh, and you get billed for whatever you consume during that month. It's, think of it more like a power bill rather than a prepaid plan with the mobile phone company or something like that. Being a CSP reseller, it gives you the opportunity to build Azure services into your managed service offering. So instead of reselling the consumption cost directly to the customer, you can actually build that into your managed services as part of your value add to the customer and sell it as an entire package or product itself. Let's talk a bit about the new modern commerce for Azure and the Azure plan. So now, previously, Azure is offered to CSP under an old offering called Microsoft Azure on CSP. This has been replaced since November 2019. A new offer called Azure Plan has been available. Um, Microsoft Azure will be retired eventually. There is no set date yet, so both plans are currently available. But there is a preference to Azure Plan at the moment, and that's because the cost management functionality in the Azure portal is available on Azure Plan, whereas it's not available in the old offering. Um, that is actually one of the reasons why Azure on CSP has been quite difficult to adopt. It's mainly around the cost management and pricing accuracy issues. Azure Plan is seen to be the solution because of the cost management functionality and how it's a little bit closer to the Azure pricing calculator. Cost management now. Cost management allows you to quickly obtain a graphical view of Azure consumption for a tenant. You can also plug Power BI into the Azure Cost Management portal, and this will give you the analytics of your consumption data that you were doing previously. For example, if you're a customer of exeed, then we could send you the reconciliation data that we get from Microsoft every month that makes up your Azure consumption bill. Or you could also use the My Cloud Store platform and pull a spreadsheet of the consumption data from our connection to the Microsoft Partner Center API. Uh, all of that is quite complex. So the replacement of that with Azure Cost Management will enable a lot of our customers better access to cost management data. Well, basically, on a high level, what it means is that if you're talking to a customer, either on the phone or on site with them face to face, you can always pull up a laptop, log into the Azure portal for that customer, and pull up the consumption data on a graph, presentable graph that you can show them. We will go more into the Azure Cost Management a bit later today. I'll show you a little bit more about what the graphs look like and everything. Pricing Azure deals. Now, one of the biggest challenges to the adoption of Azure is the pricing. It's actually pricing the solutions. It's quite hard to get an accurate price due to the shift to the cloud consumption mentality that I mentioned in yesterday's module. There's a big change in mentality when you're moving to the cloud, especially around instead of buying or pricing for 5 years up front and the potential growth within the 5 years, you're starting to look at immediate requirement pricing. How much resources do I require today or to this week versus the next 5 years? You got to be a lot more accurate in that sense. So how do we help the customers navigate through this? That's what we're tackling today. It really depends on the customer and how mature they are towards the cloud and consumption-based model. You need to ensure that the customer understands that the services consumed are like a power bill. The more you consume, the more you need to pay. So if you're not buying excess power in advance and just leaving there wasting it, then you're only paying for what you used in the Azure model, consumption-based model. Most customers are afraid of a bill shock. That's actually one of the reasons why Azure hasn't really been consumed as much. This is where the bill that there's an unexpected increase in the bill. One of the ways of doing that is just assisting the customer in budgeting on Azure. The other possibility, another option really, is just bundling it together into your managed service offering. So package it together. Package Azure as one of your ingredients, basically. I like to take the sample or analogy of treating this like a cake shop. The price of the eggs, flour, and power that you would normally use to bake, they're always variable. From month to month. Each cake that you bake has different amounts of ingredients. So take Azure as that. Each component of Azure is different, right? And there's no two cakes that are the same. Even though you can try and with experience you can try and get it as accurately as possible. But when you're doing bespoke cakes, when you're baking cakes, the reason I'm saying cakes and not bread is because cakes are not as mass produced, right? So the consumption is always different per cake, well, on the normal case anyway. So what you got to do is figure out how much your consumption resources are, your ingredients cost. You take that into factor, and then you add your managed services offering into it, and then you package it up and sell it as an end product to the customer instead of just taking the ingredients and just marking it up and selling it to the customers in a reseller model. This is actually what we see as the advantage of CSP as compared to the EA and the pay-as-you-go. Because the EA and the pay-as-you-go, customers are paying for the ingredients directly, and they're just getting you to come in and build the solution, right? As a CSP, you own the relationship, you own the entire step-by-step process of creating that solution for the customer. So take advantage of that, build your managed services, add your value adds, and that's how you set yourself differently to the next partner. Customers will be more willing to stay with you that way, because if you offer them value, there is no reason for them to move. Right? So here are some tools that will help you price up or assist you basically in getting more accuracy in pricing with Azure. There's the Azure pricing calculator that I'll cover in the next slide. The total cost of ownership calculator that assists you in migration projects. Windows Virtual Desktop Cost Solution Configurator is a very specific calculator around Windows Virtual Desktop, but it gives you the power of figuring out the difference between running RDS on Azure versus running Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, Azure Pricing Calculator, this is key, this is essential, this is usually the first place you would hit when looking to price up an Azure solution. The idea is that you've interviewed your customer, you understand their requirements, you've gone through the process of figuring out what they need, what technology they need, and you've sort of got a high level idea of their solution. You know what components you need and what are your ingredients for your project. You would then jump onto the Azure pricing calculator and you would key in the different components that make up your solution. And that's how you sort of get an idea, an estimate of your solution. This is not a quote. The pricing calculator does not give you a quotation of exactly how much is being consumed. It's only an estimate. And that's purely because you can never be accurate. You can never be 100% accurate. You can never be exact with Azure because it's a cost, it's a consumption-based model. Every month is going to be different because the number of hours per month is different. The amount of consumption on bandwidth and I/O is different. So you are never going to have 2 months that are going to come up to be the same. Let's have a look at the pricing calculator. I'll bring this up. The pricing. So this is the Azure pricing calculator that I have. The way it works is if you've got a Microsoft account and you're logged into your Microsoft account, so this can be a work account or a personal account, it saves the estimates. It saves your estimates from previous entries. That way you can actually come back and revisit your previous estimates again. So you don't have to redo every project. You can always come back, adjust the numbers a little bit, and get better accuracy the next time you do it. It's again, as I mentioned yesterday, it's an experience thing. The more you do it, the better you will get at pricing accuracy, and the more you do Azure, the better you will get at making sure that you choose the right resources or the right solution. Pricing calculator allows you to pick almost every service that is available in Azure. There are a lot of services available in Azure. The main ones that a CSP reseller in the SMB market would possibly come across are virtual machines, storage accounts, SQL database, possibly containers at ACI, Azure Container Instances. And that's purely because ACI is being adopted. Containers are being adopted a lot more recently. I myself personally, I see ACI, I see containers as the best way to reduce consumption costs in Azure. It's basically, instead of reserving a VM on IaaS, then you have to think about managing the VM. You have to think about patching, antivirus, um, and then you've basically reserved, at least 2 CPU, 1 CPU, and 4 GB RAM for your services. Instead of doing that, if you run containers, then a container sits on shared VM instances that is shared across multi-tenancy, so shared across other consumers as well. You're sharing that resource, so the ACI instance is a lot cheaper in terms of actual resource consumption. Therefore, you're bringing your price down as well. But it's not just that. It's when you go to a container, you can shut it down and keep it aside a lot quicker than you would with virtual machines. The automation aspect of ACI would give you a lot more power in that sense. We will go into a lot more details with options that you can have in Azure for your solution sometime tomorrow in tomorrow's module. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to bring up. So you would add the machine into your spreadsheet. It pops up down here. You say, I want it to be in Australia East. I know it's going to be a Windows operating system. We're not going to put a SQL server, but if you want to load an exclusive SQL server, exclusive VM hosting a SQL server, you can put that in here as well. And it includes the SQL Server licenses and CALs as part of that calculation. When you deploy a SQL Server on IaaS, the SQL Server license and the server CALs are inclusive in the cost of that VM. You just need to deploy it under the marketplace. We'll just choose the OS only at the moment, and then you pick the type of machines that you want to do. So the standard SKU is the D series. You've got the different generations of the D series, like the D2, D2S, and the DS2. There are differences in each of these series, and you actually have to build your experience on them. But there are a lot of experience out there in the market, in the industry at the moment, where you can pull information from forums and guides and just other people's opinions on their solutions. If you're just starting out, I recommend doing that, or doing proof of concepts in house. Just spin up the machine, test it, get a feel of it, and then shut it down, and then just delete it. That way you reduce your testing costs as much as possible. These indications are how much it would cost if you ran it 24/7 for the entire month. With Azure, again, consumption-based model, right? I keep saying this. If you say, I don't want to run it 24/7, so 730 hours is the magic number, the number that you sort of average out the full month running on 24/7. You sort of average out to about 730 hours across the entire year. That's the number we always use. Sometimes it goes to 744, sometimes it comes down to 715, right? So that's why it's different every month. Let's say we don't want to run 24/7. We only want to run 40 hours a week. So we say 40 hours a week multiplied by an average, let's say 4 weeks, is 160 hours, right? So we're going to run this virtual machine 40 hours a week, 160 hours a month. Then the estimate cost for that machine is $67.98. Now, this is good for servers that don't need to run all the time. probably would want to run certain servers 24/7, like your domain controller. In those cases, what I normally would do is I'll turn the hours up back up to 730 hours, and I would apply reserve instances to it. You would basically, what a reserve instance is you're reserving, you're telling Microsoft that you're going to commit to running that VM 24/7 for a year or 3 years. This pricing calculator will give you an estimate how much that will cost on a monthly basis. This is an estimate again, because when you do a reserve instance, it gives you a price on an actual year or 3 years. You're actually getting better savings the more that you commit to. But yeah, with the pricing calculator as well, if you have hybrid benefit, and we will go into a lot of these details tomorrow with tomorrow's module on what the difference between hybrid benefit and reserve instances are and how you can actually optimize your cost. But if you know that you have hybrid benefit, you can actually turn it on and enable the discount. And you can see that on a DS2 running 24/7, we turn on hybrid benefit and 3-year reserve instance. We went from $310 a month. We've just brought it down to $62 a month. So this is, your estimate that it gives you the ability to build your experience, right? After that, you can start looking into, okay, what kind of managed disk do we want? This is normally for the OS layer. We say we've got one operating system disk. By default, it's always a S10 128 gig. So that's going to run at $14.24 for that month. Then if you want to say add more disks, so your data disk, you've got a SQL server with 3 hard drives, right? Then we add a storage account in there. You can even name these things like disk A for server A, let's say. Then you would say, okay, I want a standard hard disk. I want it to be 1 terabyte. I want to add some snapshots to it as well, because I want to account for that cost. We're going to have 2 identical disks on that server, or maybe 2 servers with identical disks. Use the calculator according to the way you like it, the way you process your thought process. We've got an estimate, maybe 1 million transactions through the month. Okay, maybe not 1 million transactions, that's overkill. 100,000 transactions going through. Transactions are IOPS, your read writes and things like that. These are transaction units in 10,000 transactions. So 100,000 transaction units are 100,000 multiplied by 10,000. That's why it's $75.60. This is not 10,000 IOPS or 100,000 IOPS. Okay, so it's very different. It's only 0.08 cents per unit, but this is specifically useful for very busy servers that do a lot of transactions, a lot of IO transactions. Then we want to see if our snapshots are local based or zone based redundancy. How many snapshots? What are the average size of the snapshots that we're taking? That this gives you an estimate of how much that will cost. Another thing I would like to normally put in is bandwidth cost, because this is something that gets missed out from a lot of customers. On Azure, bandwidth is charged on egress, not ingress. So the rule, the main rule I have on this is the traffic going out of the Azure data center, of the Microsoft data center? If the traffic is going out of the Microsoft data center, then it's chargeable. If the traffic is coming into the Microsoft data center, that's not chargeable. If the traffic remains within the Microsoft data center, so within the same VNet that you have on the Azure instance or the Azure tenant, then that's not chargeable. So 2 VMs talking to each other on Azure is not chargeable. It's when you have a website and customers from the outside are viewing the website. The the bandwidth that you're pulling out of that the traffic that they're pulling out of that web server is chargeable. So you have to make an estimate on that. There are tools out there to assist you in this. Basically, tools that you run on the web server and figure out what the traffic is. Or if you have firewall or network devices in your on-premise sites or wherever the web server is sitting that you want to move into Azure, you can use the network equipment to measure the amount of bandwidth in that direction heading out. Then you get a good idea of what the costs are for bandwidth. That's pretty much with Azure Pricing Calculator. I think I've spoken quite a bit about it, but this is what it is important to understand the Azure Pricing Calculator, especially in a sales perspective, engineering as well, but sales more. I would recommend having a technical engineer, a technical person with you when you're using the pricing calculator, because you need to understand what components you're adding, what ingredients you're putting into your solution. But this is the first place you should be hitting. Now, if you have a migration project, a customer's approaching, they're saying that their equipment on site, their IT infrastructure is approaching end of life, and they want to know how much it would cost to move their servers, the services hosted on their servers into Azure. The total cost of ownership calculator helps with this. It gives you the ability to create a spreadsheet on how much you're currently consuming on premise, right? And then you do a comparison to how much it would the total cost for the IT infrastructure would cost in Azure, right? These are more conversations with high-level management for the customer side, but it's still important. What I normally do on my total cost of ownership, especially on premise, I also add in things like power cost, cost of running the equipment on premise, the cost of field delivery services. How much does it cost for an engineer to be called out? What are your warranty costs for your hardware? Those tend to be forgotten. The other thing as well is if you've got equipment, and these tie in more with small businesses rather than bigger businesses, right? When we put IT server infrastructure into a business, you've got to dedicate a room to that server infrastructure. You got to pay for the air conditioning of that room. You got to pay for the air gaps, the dust gaps of that room. How much does that cost? Can we repurpose that room, remove it, and put 4 tables? You've got space to get an extra 4 people in that office. I've seen cases where there are people sitting next to toilets and things like that in their office because they're running out of space. So we know that space in an office is actually a commodity as well. It's actually value, right? Moving the infrastructure into Azure, moving the infrastructure into cloud allows you to save on that commodity and reuse that for other purposes. You can put a pool table there as well and reduce the amount of stress leave that your staff members are taking. You can take all of that into consideration, build that into your total cost of ownership and your comparisons, your analysis and your assessments to moving to Azure. That will help with talking to your customers about. The next one is the Windows Virtual Desktop cost solution configurator. This is a very long name. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet. I have it here. It's a very specific use case. It's for people that want to look at Windows Virtual Desktop. We will cover this in depth in Module 4. Windows Virtual Desktop, it's a very, very big topic, but it's a very hot topic at the moment. We're seeing a huge uptake currently Previously, not so much because there were rumors about Windows Virtual Desktop being not very usable in the Australasian area. That's all been resolved. Windows Virtual Desktop is the latency to Windows Virtual Desktop at the moment it's pretty low at the moment, and it's fully usable now, and we're seeing a huge uptake between Australia and New Zealand at the moment. Not just in the enterprise space, but in the SMB market as well. The solution configurator allows you to pretty much figure out how much it's going to cost up Windows Virtual Desktop. I've used this myself. I've even gone down to a 5-user count cost. Obviously, the lower the number, because you do have infrastructure that you're paying for, but not the same as RDS infrastructure. What I've done in the past is I've done a cost comparison for versus infrastructure and Windows Virtual RDS infrastructure and Windows Virtual Desktop. Every number I key in, Windows Virtual Desktop comes to be lower, even if we take into the consideration of the M365 license you need or the Windows 10 Enterprise license you need to access Windows Virtual Desktop. But because WVD gives you access to the RD gateway, RD broker, and the different infrastructure for RDS, you've actually reduced a bit of cost there. You've got to take into consideration your RDS CALs as well, right? When you map all of that to an M365 license or a Windows 10 Enterprise license, in every scenario I've calculated so far, I've seen WVD to be cheaper. So that's a consideration to take. This link here this link in the spreadsheet, I will issue out the spreadsheet. I'll share out the spreadsheet across the channel once we've completed all of the power slide, the slide deck to the entire channel. Once we've completed all of the modules, I'll populate them into PDF documents to be sent out. I just need to make them a little bit cleaner before I send them out. Let's move on to the next slide. So now we've deployed the solution, we've priced up the solution, and the engineers have gone through the project and they've deployed the solution into Azure. What happens next? What do we do now? What additional values can we find out of that solution that we've just deployed into Azure? This brings in that managed service offering potentials that you can get out of deploying to Azure. First thing I would do is monitor cost and perform cost management by using the Azure Cost Management blade. I mean, going forward, we'll be using Azure Plan anyway, so you will have access to Azure Cost Management. For those people that are still running on Microsoft Azure on the old offering, we can give you the consumption information. It doesn't have to be every month because you can actually pull it out of my cloud store with Exeed as well. So the advantage of being a customer with Exeed, a CSP reseller with Exeed, is that we've got a website that we allow people to log into and pull data out of Microsoft Partner Center of their Azure tenants. We're pulling the consumption data out so that you can feed it into Power BI and make your own dashboards out of it. Azure Cost Management just makes that a lot easier to do. That's actually the main difference. So, cost management is on by default with Azure Plan. It gives you a better experience for your users, not just your engineers, your sales staff, but also your customers as well, right? What you can do is if you give them the appropriate permissions, your customers can actually log in and see the cost management. I don't know if you want to do that, but it depends on your managed service agreement with your customer. Let's have a look at a sample tenant I've got here for cost management. Here we go. So this is an example. This is my own test tenant. This is cost management. You would go in and you would connect through the cost management blade here. So run the cost management blade, and then you go into cost analysis, and you've got access to cost management here. See how it tracks the consumption data so far for this calendar month, and it gives you a forecast for the remainder of the month. This is sort of the default view. What you can do is, okay, you're having a chat with your customer. You're talking about, oh, why was my consumption higher last month compared to the month before? Right. With Cost Management Blade, you can just pull this up and go last invoice. Let's have a look and see what's happening. Wait for it to load. And oh, we didn't have any purchases accumulated for the last invoice, so can't really see that. Oh, that's marketplace. Sorry, looking at the wrong filter. Here we go. This is last month's consumption. $79 was consumed or charged out. These numbers that you were gonna get on cost management, they are not your they are not your buy numbers. They are the retail cost. So this is MSRP that will show up in cost management. Um, just so that, for those people that are currently panicking about, oh, the customer is going to see how much I'm actually being charged from Exceed or from Microsoft. That's not the case. This is how much the MSRP costs are. Let's say, okay, we've got a few resource groups and we want to know a specific project, a specific set of servers. How much were they costing? One of my resource groups cost $31 last month. Another one costs $14.96, right? Or let's say, okay, we want to know what service types, we're producing cost, and we know the storage consumption was about $65, whereas virtual machines, because I had all of my machines shut down, it only cost me 90 cents last. My virtual networks were costing $8.50. So that's my bandwidth and my public IPs and things like that. So this is cost management. What you would do is, you after you've deployed the solution, you want to keep in touch with your customers. This is the added value you can add by giving them maybe quarterly reports on this, or just monthly meetings and just discussing on their consumption and how they can perform better, or newer services they can add into this, or how they can improve their processes. That's all of that you can do. Through cost management, you can also set budgets. So if you set a budget on your cost management, what it'll do is you can set it to email you when you hit a certain threshold. Let's say I set a budget of $500. As soon as it hits $500, it sends an email out to the engineers and the account team, and we can log in, check it, figure out what happened, why did it go over budget, and then have a chat with the customers proactively to give them a heads up, saying, hey, cost has gone up in the last month, and you might get a bigger bill. Or if you're packaging this into a product already, then these are numbers you need to know so that you can do adjustments to your product pricing. Right? In a cake shop scenario that I always like to do, egg prices in the past half a year or in the past year went up from the average. I don't know if you go to the supermarkets, we were seeing a tray of eggs, 30 eggs, was costing around. It used to be about $8.99 or $7.99, and I was seeing prices that went up to $12.99. Right. So these are those things that you need to manage. You don't necessarily increase the price of your cake, but you might need to adjust your recipe a little bit and then reduce the recipe to match whatever service that you were providing before, or these are the things that you need to do to sort of be successful in using Azure. The Azure Advisor, this is a built-in tool in the Azure portal. What it does is it gives you recommendations against like best practice scenarios for your entire tenant. We'll go back to my sample tenant here, and I'll show you what the Azure Advisor actually does. So this is the Azure Advisor. When you load it, it does some calculations, and it will look for recommendation. It will tell you things like, okay, you don't have high availability on your solution. You're only running single ARM servers, so that's against best practice. You're not running at best practice. It's quite a high risk. Here are recommendations that we think you should do. And then it'll say things like that. Or security. You've got some accounts that are not on MFA. Those kind of suggestions will pop up here. For here, we've got my network ports to my VMs are open to the public because these are my test VMs, and I've opened a public IP address with RDS or RDP ports to them. Right. So I'm getting it highlighted to me saying, hey, this is very risky because your NSG, you haven't configured your NSG to block those ports. We recommend you putting a load balancer in front of it and then restricting access to the servers, or putting a VPN gateway and then using a VPN tunnel to come in. So those are the recommendations. There's also things like performance. You're running your VMs. My VMs are not running, so I'm not getting any performance metrics. But you're running your VMs, and Advisor has found that your VMs are running at 10% resource consumption versus, it should really be running on 70-80% on Azure, because you don't want to be wasting the resource that you're not actually using. So these are the advice. What will show up here is it'll tell you to reduce the size of that VM from 4 vCPU down to 2 vCPU, for example. There are a lot more things that you can get out of the Advisor. That's normally what I would run on a monthly basis. So sometimes you'll get new advice come up every month. Build this into your managed service offering. Use this as a sort of a reporting tool to build new engagements with your customers, new work with your customers as well, right? You can say, okay, let's go through a BCP planning session, and then these are recommendations, but obviously bring in your subject matter experts for the customers. You are the subject matter experts of your customers, right? So bring in your experience into the conversation as well. If you know that the customer doesn't need to be highly available because they've got backups already, then that's fine. Just remove the recommendations out of your report. These are here to help you. That's all. Azure Security Center. So the Azure Advisor is sort of built off the Azure Security Center as one of its components. If you want to gather more information, the Security Center is there. It's not really a free product. You can use Azure Security Center free, which gives you a set of recommendations. The standard SKU for Azure Security Center does cost, but what it does is it deploys agents, it looks at your services on Azure, and it gives you recommendations on insights to how your security health is on the Azure tenant as a whole, and down to the service levels as well. This is actually quite helpful. One of the newer additions to it at the moment that Microsoft has added is regulatory compliance. So some people have industry standards they have to adhere to, like the ISO 27001 or the NIST. This will help, enabling regulatory compliance with Azure Security Center gives you the ability to sort of monitor and sort of build your use case against the compliance requirements. So I recommend using this and building this into your practice as well. Azure Monitor. A lot of the MSPs out there at the moment are using MSP tools like Kaseya, Enable, um, LabTech, right? So is sort of this is SCOM in the cloud, operation management in the cloud. It doesn't allow you to deploy or patch. That is Intune, which comes with your M365 licenses. Azure Monitor is different. Azure Monitor is looking at your Azure services like your VMs, your applications, your storage accounts, your networks, and it hooks into your services and gives you performance metrics and access metrics and aggregations and things like that. Um, it gives you a lot of sort of information that you might want to get, like for example, the networks monitor tells you, okay, we've got two load balancers and the health of the resources are gray. Gives you an overview of all of your load balancers, what SKUs they are, what availability. So you've got to deploy the probe to get the health status on them. But this will let you see your uh, solution on Azure. It gives you a better monitoring ability on the solutions on your Azure platform. Um, Now, Azure Sentinel, um, not many people will have a look at this in the SMB market, but it is a very, very, very good tool. It's a very good entry into security information and event management. Um, Rather than needing to deploy a full-on on-premise system where you've got to pay for a lot of infrastructure to get security information and event management. Um, Azure Sentinel is the SaaS service or PaaS service for that. You set your network devices, your firewalls, and your Windows servers to send the data into log analytics, which Azure Sentinel pulls from, and that's where the information gets stored. Azure Sentinel reads that information, and what it does is it gives you the ability to sort of trace through events. If you've got a breach, if you've got a security breach, an account was compromised, Sentinel sort of helps you do that and sees where the account logs into, what happened, or what kind of events happened during that time. It helps you to figure out point of interests, what servers were affected. It helps you perform root cause analysis against the event. What do we need to know, and how do we um, prevent it from happening again, or how do we reverse the damage that was done? So Sentinel is the tool that enables you to access that kind of technology, that kind of experience. So sales programs for CSP partners. Now, um, a lot of my customers, a lot of partners get in touch with me and they ask me, Kenny, how do I get this? How do are there any tools from Microsoft? Are there any programs from Microsoft that will enable me to accelerate a deal? And any perks in trying to get the deal to Azure? There are a few. There are quite a few of them. I would like to go through some of them right now. This is the key one that I like to bring up is the free assessments program with Azure and Microsoft. It's when you've got a customer that is, the scenario is, it doesn't necessarily have to be um, an end of life scenario or a server refresh scenario, but it could also be that the customer is curious or you are curious and you've got a customer with which they've got 20 VMs on premise. So 20 VMs is roughly maybe 4 or 5 physical servers. Um, and they're all approaching end of life, or you just want to know how much it's going to cost to move that into Azure. Now, if you don't have the 20 VMs, there's a tool called the Azure Migrate Center, right? That gives you the ability to run those assessments yourself as a managed service. So you can actually run that to and I believe some of the partners are already doing that with your customers anyway. You use Azure Migrate and you run the assessment tools that are available in Azure Migrate against the customer's premises, and it does the checks, and you produce the report, you write up the report yourself, and you present it to the customer. Azure free assessments are different. Microsoft does it for you, or Microsoft gives you the tools the professional tools that they use if you want to run it yourself. So you get two options here. If you get a customer that has more than 20 VMs, engage Microsoft, and put it through the free assessments program. Microsoft will give you an AOC Cloud Economics consultant. The consultant will come in. She or he will run the project end to end. They will come in and install the applications that they require, the assessment applications that they require on the system, that are relevant, that are targeted. They will run the tools across a few weeks, depending on the size of the environment. They will pull all of the data. They will gather all of the information and put it into reports for you. The reports, some of the sample reports are, the inventory of the infrastructure, or the ROI TCO analysis that you could get. So comparison to Azure and on-premises. Optimization guidelines that Microsoft reckons that you should be adopting. Things like, some servers are not running HA, but they are critical to your business, so it's recommended that you duplicate these servers, or duplicate and reduce the resources. Or these servers are underutilized, they're running at 20% rather than 80%. You can reduce the amount of vCPU and RAM, just things like that. They will also look at your licensing state and how to optimize your licensing state. Let's say you've got 200 Windows Server Standard core licenses, right? 200 cores. But you're only using 50% of the licenses at the moment. This analysis, this assessment would pick that up and basically tell you all of that. Right? What you're getting is a consultant doing that for you, or taking you through that journey, so that you can actually take that and build that into a practice yourself. Right? The relationship with the customer is still done by the CSP partner, so Microsoft can come in with you, but in the end of the day, it's more about the partner and the customer building a better relationship from this, right? So that's the main aim for it. Once you've got the assessments done, and and the customer is interested in moving into Azure, and you want to move their services up into the cloud, then and there's about 20 VMs or more than $5,000 long term. So at the end of the project, then you might want to do a proof of concept. You might want to do the first step, just to get the customer more confident with the proposal. Right? Come to us. Right? We will put through a request for a proof of concept credit with Microsoft. They expect a 10-to-1 return on investment, but that's 10-to-1 at the end state of the project, not the proof of concept. So let's say we predict that this project is going to bring in 10,000 monthly Azure consumption going forward at the end state. Then Microsoft will put in $1,000 proof of concept credits for you to consume in the next 2 months. and then you deliver the solution and to the customer. You run all of the equipment um, and run the entire solution for them and present it to the customer, and they're happy. Then you go into production from there. The proof of concept is not limited to migration projects, right? If you've got a new project or new application deployment, or you know application modernization um, project, or a new even a new managed service as a partner. So there's no customers involved, but you as a partner want to provide a go-to-market managed service offering on Azure. You also qualify for the CSP POP credit. In that scenario, you can always approach Microsoft and say, here's the proposal, here's what we want to do, but we want to do a proof of concept first. Can we have some credits and to run this project? So to come to us and have a chat with us about it. The Azure Fast Track program is the same. It's $5,000 monthly Azure spend at the end state of the project again. So remember, it's always at the end state of the project, and we're looking at monthly Azure spend, not a one-off. You would get access to the Fast Track program. What Fast Track is it's a group of specialists teams in Microsoft, typically made out of the global black belts, they call them. They are the gurus in their fields, in any of the services within Microsoft. So again, this is not limited to a migration project. This is anything you want to put on Azure, any consumption that might light up $5,000 a month, monthly Azure spend. You will have the ability to get into the fast track program. You get assigned a support engineer that will help you with your project, and he will help you figure out the solutions and migrations. The support engineer will then have access to the gurus, the specialist teams, the different specialist teams, and they will bring in according to the requirement, according to the need. So this is important with a lot of projects, because a lot of times we do a new project in Azure and we find out that we've hit a hiccup and something breaks and something's wrong, right? And we need help, we need specialist help, but we put in our advisory hours and we try and get help on it, and sometimes you'll get the guru, sometimes you won't, sometimes you get level 1, level 2, but this ensures you get the right people to help your project, the right specialist skill sets to assist you in your project. That's what Fast Track is all about. The Azure Migration Project program, it's specifically for migration projects. The migration team is built out of specialist migration experts. They're slowly upskilling Fast Track to gain more experience in migration soon. But at the moment, it's reliant on the migration team. So the Azure Migration program is around that. The specialist team or a specialist partner will be engaged to help you with your migration project, and they will help you with the planning and the implementation for the solution. If you come across any issues in between, they will assist you in ironing out all of those bumps. Lastly, this is the last program that is available that I'm aware of that is available to our CSP partners. It's the Windows Virtual Desktop Lighthouse. This is targeted to partners that have 100 or more RDS, VDI, Citrix, VMware View, any remote desktop type solutions across your entire portfolio. So not 100 seats per customer, but 100 seats across your entire portfolio, right? So you might have 5 20-seat customers on RDS. This is targeted to anyone that is above that. But the Lighthouse program has a pilot program where if you've got a project at 25 seat plus, well, there's an introduction program to the Lighthouse program where it gives you the technical information. You know, it gives you support basically. But what's more important is the pilot phase of the project. Um, if you've identified a 25 seat plus project, potential RDS VDI project, and you want to sort of bring it into WVD instead, uh, Microsoft, this is specifically for CSP resellers in New Zealand, right? Microsoft will provide a professional services consultant um, come in, consult on the project, help you cost up the project, figure out what the cost is and everything, and design, script template, and deliver the project alongside with you to the customer. Right? They will hand over all of the materials for the project so that you as the CSP partner can take the information and the knowledge gain and scale it out to the rest of your portfolio, scale it out to the rest of your customers, build it into a product, a managed service product that you can offer to your customers. Um, Part of the offerings from the Windows Virtual Desktop Lighthouse program as well, and especially the pilot, the production is a 500 seat offer, which I don't see the SMB market would really have much opportunities in. But if you do have 500 seats, you actually get more out of it as well. So come talk to us about it. But another thing that comes with this program is access to acceleration, migration acceleration tools or WVD acceleration tools like Lakeside, Liquidware, Citrix Cloud, Nerdio, and CloudJumper. So they give you timed access to these tools, so 2 months, 3 months, so that to help you accelerate your journey into WVD. From what I've gathered so far on a typical 25 seat to 100 seat WVD migration project or configuration project, from day one, from go ahead, from the go ahead day, takes about 2 to 3 weeks on average at the moment to fully deliver and go live with WVD. That's with the services from these professional services consultants. So it's a no-brainer. This will definitely help you build a much broader managed service that you can bring to your customers or potentially as well new customers. So that's it for today's module. Coming up tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, but Monday morning, we will have module 3. We will cover, migrating, how to efficiently migrate workloads into Azure, the tools that is available to us to migrate, how to build a go-to-market offer on Azure so that you can, build a managed service product, and what options do you have to go to market with Azure. We'll talk about the Windows Server 2008 R2 end of life opportunity at the moment. So this is a key play for getting sales onto Azure. Optimizing BCDR, so BCP basically with Azure. With the whole COVID-19 scenario at the moment, I believe this is more relevant today than the end of life situation with Windows Server. So we'll talk into that a little bit. And then how to save costs with hybrid benefit and reserve instances. We will talk about hybrid benefit and reserve the last module in today's module has been about an hour, and I'm trying to keep them down to about an hour. But I believe the next module there are a lot of content in it, so we might go to an hour and a half, potentially more. So be prepared, and yeah, thank you for joining me today. We're running a Q&A session at the moment. I'll keep I'll keep the webinar open for a minute or two. Just post any questions, and we've got if you put in your email address when you logged in, I'll get in touch with you with those answers as well. Feel free to contact me on keiko@exeed.co.nz anytime. If you got any sales opportunities or questions around sales or products, or just you want to talk about Azure, you just want to complain about Azure to me, yeah, just feel free to send me an email. My number is posted up on the My Cloud Store website as well, so feel free to get in touch with me directly. I might not always be available on phone because I'm in and out of meetings all the time, but if you send me an email, I'll definitely get back to you on it. That's it for today's webinar. We'll keep the lines open for another minute, and yeah, thanks for joining me.